Your presence here today as ministers and senior military and civilian officials of the countries of the Americas region is testament to the fraternal bonds which have traditionally existed among our peoples and countries. And it indeed underscores our shared commitment to the peace and prosperity of our hemisphere. It is this very commitment that enables the convening of this forum for the primary purpose of holding in-depth discussions on the defense and security challenges within the hemisphere, bearing in mind that the challenges we face today are far more complex than the national ones we faced yesterday. Such commitment was also demonstrated in April of 2009 when Trinidad and Tobago received the heads of state and government of the countries represented here today for the 5th Summit of the Americas. On that occasion, the first summit to be held in the Caribbean, the leaders of the Americas held discussions on the theme, securing our citizens' future by promoting human prosperity, energy security, and environmental sustainability, a theme which several years later resonates with the thematic focus of the 12th CDMA. Interestingly enough, this is also the first time that the CDMA is being held in a Caribbean state, and we are very honored and pleased to host you here in our Caribbean homeland. The Caribbean states that are members of the CDMA and some of our Central American colleagues cannot boast of large standing armies, navies, or air forces. Indeed, many of our countries do not have ministries dedicated only to defense matters or large defense institutions. However, we affirm and adhere to the principles that were established in Williamsburg, Virginia in 1995 at the very onset of these conferences of defense ministers. We believe that the preservation of democracy is the basis for ensuring our mutual security. We believe that military and security forces play a critical role in supporting and defending the legitimate interests of our states. We believe also that our armed forces must be subordinate to democratically controlled authority and act within the borders of our national constitutions with full respect for human rights at all times. These Williamsburg principles also speak to transparency in defense matters through exchanges of information and greater civilian-military dialogue, the importance of negotiating and resolving disputes, and the importance of defense cooperation are fundamental pillars of those truths. Over the past 21 years, the work of this forum has been driven by that Williamsburg spirit. With keen interest, your predecessors have shared experiences on issues such as confidence-building measures, regional cooperation for defense, the role of the armed forces in democracy, and once more, most relevant today, the matter of strengthening partnerships in support of humanitarian assistance and aid in the aftermath of natural disasters. Issues on the table at the time of the first CDMA included trafficking in drugs and arms, crime, and terrorism. While these issues remain valid today, the passage of time has indeed drawn us individually and collectively into new theaters of war, which demand responses to a plethora of unprecedented and insidious threats. This is a reflection of the increasingly volatile globalized world in which we live today. The need to consider options for an enhanced security and defense posture propels us, therefore, to not only address traditional threats, but to develop responses to the new and emerging threats while taking account of the changing national, regional, and international environment. Ladies and gentlemen, this situation is not unique to this hemisphere. The scourges of our time do not respect size or geography. It is noteworthy that in the recent address to the 71st session of the United Nations General Assembly, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon expressed his, quote-unquote, deep concern for the state of global affairs. A few of his observations pertinent here today include, and I quote, "Gulf of mistrust divides citizens from their leaders. Extremists push people into camps of us and them. The earth assails us with rising seas, record heat, and extreme storms. And danger defines the days of many." He went on to say, "Armed conflicts have grown more protracted, more complex, and more destructive. Human rights are pillars of society and the antidote to violent extremism and civic despair, the concerns of all nations today." At a time when the global community is working towards the attainment of 17 sustainable developmental goals, inclusive of one related to security, the CDMA presents a much-needed forum for considering more closely the contribution which could be made by ministers of defense and their respective agencies over and above the traditional defense roles. As we reflect on Goal 16 of the 2030 Transformative Sustainable Development Agenda of the United Nations, which points to the promotion of peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, we cannot help but acknowledge that notwithstanding significant development gains, the global landscape continues to be plagued by socio-economic ills inclusive of poverty, inequality, unemployment, and environmental degradation. The convergence of these and other challenges such as extreme violence, sustained conflict, use of information and communication technology for nefarious purposes, and erratic weather patterns result in a range of unwelcome consequences for us all, large and small. At the 71st session of the United Nations General Assembly, Trinidad and Tobago made reference to the recognition of the 2030 Agenda that sustainable development can only be realized in a peaceful, secure, and stable environment bereft of war and any kind of conflict. In this regard, the threats of transnational organized crime, violent extremism, terrorism, money laundering, trafficking in persons, cybercrime, and illicit trafficking in small arms and light weapons have the potential to impact regional and international security and indeed to undermine sustainable development efforts, particularly for small island developing states such as those of us who reside here in the Caribbean. The heightened level of volatility, particularly in the area of security, which is now evident across the globe, has created an undeniable imperative for closer collaboration and cooperation that supersedes that which has historically been driven by bonds of friendship. Indeed, as we seek to secure our borders, preserve our democracy and sovereignty, defend our interests and promote peace and security for our citizens, the existence of supranational and virtual web-based structures propel us to reconfigure and retool our defense mechanism and cooperation efforts and arrangements for this new and unfolding reality. As events across the globe over the last year have unequivocally demonstrated such volatility has visited the developed, the developing, the landlocked, and on the coastal and island states. The current situation requires of us new and different perspectives, a paradigm shift. It is not enough, for example, for us to say that we have invested in the acquisition of military assets, that we have amassed armaments and are the cutting edge of technology. It is not enough to say that we have strengthened our armed forces. It is not enough to say that we meet biannually to exchange experiences and ideas. The wave of new threats which threaten this era demands nothing less than our undivided attention to the institutionalization of robust mechanisms for information sharing, continuous cooperation and collaboration, not next year, not next month, but now. The overarching theme of the conference, strengthening defense and security cooperation in the hemisphere in an increasingly volatile global environment, was proposed by Trinidad and Tobago in our bid to emphasize the need for the Ministers of Defense of the Americas to explore new avenues for engagement and cooperation in security and defense matters. And not just security and defense for the wealthy and the large, but for the small and all the meaningful. There can be little argument that the fundamental prerequisites for any such discussion include flexibility, institutional and infrastructural agility, and appreciation of the contextual arena in which we all operate, and an openness to understanding the uniqueness of others. Indeed, Article 2 of the CDMA regulations outline the purpose of this forum in addressing matters of mutual interest, and indeed, it indicates that the expected output would be increased cooperation and integration. The regulations also reflect a recognition that the member states of the CDMA are not homogeneous in nature, yet the security and defense challenges on the hemisphere, as indeed those of the wider global community, transcend geographical, language, political, social, and cultural barriers, and therefore calls for mechanisms of enhanced cooperation and collaboration. And it's against that background that I'm disappointed today that Cuba is not here. Cuba is a part of the Caribbean. Cuba is a part of the hemisphere. And if we say that geography, language, political system, and social standing does not divide us, then Cuba should be here. Within many of the sub-regions of the hemisphere, there are examples of such mechanisms. For CARICOM, security cooperation is a pillar of our integration movement, and as lead head for crime and security in the region, Trinidad and Tobago has been responsible for directing regional policy to enhance the security of our citizens against traditional as well as new and unknown emerging threats. For small island developing states such as ours, the maintenance of our international peace and security is of utmost importance, and we all recognize that defense and security are inextricably linked to the collective welfare and prosperity of all our people and the attainment of those sustainable development goals. Notwithstanding the existence of bilateral and sub-regional agreements and treaties in the areas of defense and security, there is no overarching cooperation policy for the Americas. In fact, the Americas is the only region in the world that does not have a hemispheric defense and security cooperation policy. The European Union, EU, the African Union, AU, and the Association of Southeastern and Asian Nations, ASEAN, can boast of the existence and effective implementation of such cooperation policies in the area of defense and security. maybe out of this conference can come a commitment and a resolution that the need for the hemisphere, our hemisphere policy should be coming at this time. Security is too important to us. And small people with big bad ideas threaten all of us. The time is now. I'm confident that the discussions here in Port of Spain will lay the foundation for the development of a hemispheric framework to improve cooperation and coordination among the defense and security authorities in the hemisphere. Moreover, we remain optimistic that among other things, the dialogue on the thematic axis, hemispheric security and defense cooperation policy, beginning with strengthened humanitarian emergency assistance, would eventually lead to the adoption of a comprehensive policy framework to guide civil to military and military to civil cooperation. Beginning first in the area of disaster response and humanitarian emergency assistance. The Caribbean region has experienced significant misfortune in the form of natural disasters, with the most recent being Hurricane Erika that swept Dominica in August 2015 and led to extensive destruction of homes and much of the island's tourism infrastructure. Moreover, we could never forget the 7.0 earthquake that rocked Haiti in 2010. And now as I speak, the havoc of Matthew is upon us, particularly on the long-suffering people of Haiti. That tragic event required humanitarian emergency assistance from the region and the wider international community. Natural disasters in Latin America, such as the 8.8 magnitude earthquake in Chile in 2010, other earthquakes in countries such as Ecuador, and floods and fires in the United States and Canada, all point to us that they are stark reminders of the hemisphere-wide vulnerability to natural disasters of all kinds. It is our hope, therefore, that this conference will provide avenues for improving preparedness and cooperation to mitigate hardship which could ensue in the immediate aftermath of natural disasters. In Trinidad and Tobago, for example, the Civil Aviation Authority has sought to enhance civil-military cooperation coordination for aeronautical search and rescue by seeking to harmonize and improve search and rescue operations within Trinidad and Tobago by hosting operational meetings with key national security stakeholders, including Trinidad and Tobago's Coast Guard, the Trinidad and Tobago Air Guard, the National Operations Center, and the Office of Disaster Preparedness. We continue to undertake our responsibility in this country for aeronautical and maritime search and rescue for a vast area of our hemisphere. Our facilities are world-class, and we take this responsibility very seriously. While we are guided by the International Aeronautical and Maritime Search and Rescue (IAMSA) manual, published as a guide to states, and we cooperate bilaterally and regionally, there can be little argument that a hemispheric policy in the area of disaster response and humanitarian emergency assistance would further enhance our effectiveness and impact. As many of you may be aware, the government which I lead assumed office in September 2015, at a time when the mainstay of our economy took a severe blow from the decline in energy prices. Even as we are adjusting our economic strategies in light of our financial constraints, and notwithstanding the need to rationalize our resources, the hosting of this meeting remained of paramount importance. The 12th CDMA is the only international conference that we are hosting this year in Trinidad and Tobago during this period of fiscal restraint. This is because we have recognized the relevance of this forum for all participating states, as well as the fact that significant preparatory work for the actual conference had already been completed. At this time, I would wish to acknowledge the financial support provided from many of our corporate citizens in partnering with the government of Trinidad and Tobago in hosting this event. We all recognize the value of the CDMA and the impact of the decisions taken at this forum on the lives and livelihoods of all the peoples of the Americas, and indeed on the peace and security of all our people. Such a recognition fuels our commitment to the multinational and multilateral processes. Ladies and gentlemen, I would wish to suggest a two-pronged approach be adopted for consideration during the course of your discussions and deliberations over the next 2 days. In this regard, the fundamental differences in our realities, including but not limited to physical size, border character and integrity, stages of development, defense administration, and physical and human resources must be juxtaposed against the indisputable fact that as a consequence of technology, increased mobility, climate change, and higher level of global integration, all threats become common threats to all. Those who have ill intent are relentless in their pursuits. We, representing the states of the hemisphere, must therefore be more committed, more vigilant, and even more disposed to strengthen collaboration and cooperation. We have been provided with the CDMA platform to shape our hemispheric security and defense strategies. And I wish to encourage all representatives to seize the opportunity of the next 2 days to consider avenues for enhanced cooperation between military and civilian entities, taking cognizance of the evolving role of the military in securing and defending states. Consider the special security concerns of small islands and other developing states in the hemisphere. Consider strengthened collaboration with hemispheric partners to address new and emerging transnational threats. Consider commencement of the dialogue between the developed of the hemispheric security and defense cooperation policy with an initial focus on humanitarian emergency assistance. Consider expanded collaboration with international agencies, and also consider action-oriented recommendations in the declaration to be adopted at the conclusion of the conference. In closing, I leave you with the motto of Trinidad and Tobago, which was established and given to us by our late founding father, Dr. Eric Williams, the first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, which he gave to us at the occasion of our independence. And it says, together we aspire, together we achieve. This motto is founded upon the principles of cooperation and collaboration. Collective effort would result in collective achievement. The embodiment of this motto is also reflected in the biblical narrative, the oneness of mind that pervaded the builders of the Tower of Babel. The logo of the 12th CDMA positions the state of Trinidad and Tobago at the center, extending outwards through the Caribbean and to the continental America. It is my hope, therefore, that the demonstration of our commitment, our warmth and hospitality has set the stage for constructive dialogue that embraces the entire hemisphere to the extent that our national motto defines and governs our collective efforts to enhancing defense and security in the interests of all the people of the Americas. I know you have a very tight schedule, packed with activity and work for 2 days. But if you are so minded and you are so able, stay on and enjoy Trinidad and Tobago for more days. Thank you very much for coming, and welcome to Trinidad and Tobago.